You have spent your entire life pouring your energy into other people's cups. You fix their problems at 2 in the morning when your own life is on fire. You carry their emotional weight until your spine cracks under the pressure and nobody notices. You compromise your boundaries, you silence your needs, you rearrange your entire existence to keep the peace. In rooms full of people who would not rearrange a single chair for you. And at the end of every single day, you are left completely empty, completely exhausted, staring at the ceiling, wondering why, after everything you have given, no one, not one person is pouring into you. They told you that putting yourself first was selfish. They called it arrogant. They called it cold. They wrapped that lie in morality and spirituality and social pressure until you believed, down to the marrow of your bones, that your purpose on this earth was to serve, to sacrifice, to shrink yourself so that others could expand. That is not wisdom. That is a psychological prison sentence designed by a parasitic society that needs your energy to function. They shamed you into selflessness, so that they could harvest your emotional labor, your time, your attention, your life force, without ever having to give a single thing back. And you let them, not because you were stupid, but because you were good. And in this world, being good without being strategic is the fastest way to be destroyed. If you are tired of bleeding out for people who would not cross the street for you, do not click away. Do not go back to the noise. Today we are opening Machiavelli's forbidden texts to teach you the most dangerous psychological shift in human existence, the dark art of self-addiction, the art of becoming so ruthlessly, so unapologetically, so obsessively invested in your own ascension that the external world loses all grip on your nervous system. This is not self-help. This is self-warfare. And by the end of this video, you will be armed. That is not a suggestion. That is a military order from 500 years ago, aimed directly at the person you are becoming right now. Machiavelli saw the world for exactly what it is, a marketplace of deception where the kind are consumed and the strategic survive. And his solution was not to become a better player in their game. His solution was to leave the game entirely, to withdraw, to build an internal fortress so impenetrable, so self-sustaining, so psychologically fortified, that the world could not touch you because the world could not reach you. That is what self-addiction is. That is the Machiavellian strategy they never wanted you to discover. Here is what dark psychology reveals about your entire life up until this moment. You have been running on an operating system that was designed to benefit everyone except you. From the moment you were old enough to understand language, you were programmed. Be nice. Share everything. Do not be selfish. Think of others first. Put your needs last. And every single time you obeyed that programming, you gave away a piece of your energy, your focus, your emotional sovereignty to someone who consumed it without a single thought about replenishing you. You were not raised to be strong. You were raised to be useful. And there is a devastating, unbridgeable difference between the two. What if the selfishness society warned you against is actually the only psychological shield that can save your life? What if the guilt you feel every time you prioritize yourself is not your conscience speaking, but the voice of every person who ever profited from your self-neglect? What if the most radical, most dangerous, most transformative thing you could ever do is become so completely addicted to your own growth, your own progress, your own empire, that there is simply no energy left for anyone who is not building alongside you? That is what this video will give you, not permission. Permission is for the weak. This video will give you the neurological architecture, the Machiavellian framework, and the dark psychological weaponry to rewire your brain at the cellular level until self-obsession becomes your default state. and people-pleasing becomes biologically impossible. You will walk away from this video not as someone who stopped caring. You will walk away as someone who finally started caring about the only person who was never cared for: you. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also drop a "obsess over you" in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. Before you can become untouchable, you must first understand the exact mechanism through which your life force has been stolen. You cannot fight what you cannot see. And right now, the system that has been draining you is invisible to you because you were trained to call it love. Here is the dark psychology that no one teaches you. Human social dynamics operate on an energy economy. Every interaction you have is a transaction. Every relationship is an exchange. And in any exchange, there is a provider and a consumer. Think about your own life with brutal, unflinching honesty. In your friendships, who initiates? Who listens? Who sacrifices plans? Who adjusts their emotional state to stabilize the other person? If the answer to every single one of those questions is you, then you are not in a friendship. You are in a harvest. You are the field, they are the farmers, and the crop they are reaping is your attention, your emotional energy, your time, and your psychological stability. Your empathy is not a virtue. In this world, it is a massive security breach. The mechanics of energy harvesting work like this. A person identifies you as a high empathy target. They learn, often unconsciously, that your sense of identity is tied to being needed. So they create need. They generate crises. They manufacture emotional emergencies that only you can solve. And every time you rush in to fix them, you deliver a massive payload of emotional energy directly into their system while depleting your own. This is not a metaphor. Neuroscience confirms that your brain releases cortisol and depletes serotonin every time you absorb someone else's emotional chaos. You are literally poisoning your own neurochemistry to stabilize theirs. And the most devastating part? They never asked you to stop. They never will. Because your self-destruction is their sustenance. Machiavellian strategy teaches that in any court, the person who gives the most is not the most loved. They are the most exploited. The courtier who is always available, always accommodating, always eager to serve is not admired. He is consumed, and then he is discarded the moment a more willing servant appears. You have been that courtier your entire life, not in a palace, but in your relationships, your workplace, your family. You have been the most available person in every room, and that availability was never rewarded with respect. It was rewarded with more demands. But realizing you are being used is not enough. You must understand exactly how to sever the pipeline. You must learn the precise psychological mechanism that transfers your addictive energy from their problems to your own empire. And that is what the next section delivers. Because you are not just addicted to helping people, you are neurologically wired for it. And rewiring that circuitry requires a specific, ruthless intervention that I am about to hand you. Here is the uncomfortable truth that will change everything. You are an addict, not to substances, not to distractions. You are addicted to being needed. You are addicted to the neurochemical rush of being someone's rescuer, someone's anchor, someone's emotional life support. Every time you fix someone else's problem, your brain releases a cocktail of dopamine and oxytocin that makes you feel momentarily significant, momentarily worthy, momentarily alive. And then the high fades and you need another hit. So you find another broken person, another crisis, another bottomless pit to pour yourself into. And the cycle repeats until you are so depleted that you cannot remember the last time you did something purely for yourself without guilt eating you alive. Stop handing the keys to your nervous system to people who cannot even manage their own lives. This addiction is not a personality trait, it is a trauma response. Dark psychology identifies it as a codependency loop installed in childhood. Somewhere in your early life, you learned that your value was conditional. You learned that love was not given freely. It was earned through performance, through sacrifice, through making yourself indispensable to emotionally unstable people. And your developing brain encoded that lesson into the deepest layer of your neural architecture until fixing others became as automatic and as compulsive as breathing. You did not choose to be this way, but you must choose to stop, because this addiction is not generosity. It is slow, silent, socially acceptable self-annihilation. The cure is not to stop caring. The cure is to redirect the addiction. This is the principle of neuroplasticity, weaponized for self-mastery. Your brain does not care what it is addicted to. It only cares about the dopamine signal. Right now, that signal is wired to external validation, to being needed, to fixing others. The Machiavellian strategy of self-addiction is to surgically disconnect that signal from the external world and reconnect it to your own progress, your own discipline, your own physical transformation, your own intellectual growth, your own financial architecture, your own empire. You are addicted to fixing them. We are going to redirect that addiction to fixing your own empire. Here is how it works at the neurological level. Every time you complete a task for your own benefit, every time you finish a workout, not for appearance, but for dominance over your own weakness, every time you read a chapter that sharpens your strategic thinking, every time you build something that belongs entirely to you, your brain fires the exact same reward chemicals that it used to fire when you rescued someone else. The difference is that this time, the investment returns to you. The energy circulates back into your own system. You are no longer an open pipeline bleeding energy into the void. You are a closed circuit, a self-sustaining, self-rewarding, self-expanding organism that feeds on its own progress. This is Sigma male psychology in its most practical, most neuroscientific form. The Sigma does not lack empathy. He has simply redirected it inward. He does not lack the ability to connect. He has simply calculated that his own ascension deserves the same obsessive devotion he once gave to unworthy people. He has transferred the addiction, and in doing so he has become untouchable, because you cannot drain a man who has learned to fill himself. I am going to show you the exact psychological framework to accelerate this transfer permanently. But first, you must survive the most brutal phase of this transformation, the death of your need for external validation. If you try to set boundaries without mastering this next step, the guilt will crush you, and every manipulator who ever fed on your compliance will use that guilt to drag you back into servitude. Listen closely. The third and most psychologically violent stage of becoming self-addicted is the death of your need for validation. And I will not lie to you. This is where most people fail. This is where the transformation collapses. Because killing your need for approval means killing a part of yourself that has been alive since you were a child. And that part will not die quietly. You know exactly what I mean. You have tried to set boundaries before. You have tried to say no. You have tried to stop caring what people think. And every single time, something inside you erupted in panic, guilt, anxiety, a suffocating fear that if you stop being agreeable, if you stop being available, if you stop performing the role of the selfless giver, you will be abandoned, not just by the people around you, but by the very idea of who you thought you were. That fear is the final weapon they have over you. And today, we neutralize it. The moment you stop caring about their opinions is the exact moment they lose all power over you. Dark psychology reveals that your need for validation is not a natural human instinct. It is an engineered dependency. From childhood, you were rewarded for compliance and punished for independence. You received love when you agreed and received withdrawal when you dissented. Over years and decades, your brain built an ironclad association. Approval equals safety. Disapproval equals danger. Abandonment equals death. That association now runs your entire life. It is the reason you check your phone hoping for messages. The reason you rehearse conversations to ensure no one is offended. The reason you feel a stab of terror when someone is silent toward you. You are not seeking connection. You are seeking a hit of neurochemical reassurance that you still matter, that you still exist, that you are still safe. That dependency must be exterminated, not managed, not balanced, exterminated. Because as long as your sense of self is wired to the reactions of others, you are a puppet. It does not matter how intelligent you are. It does not matter how strategic your thinking becomes. If someone can destabilize your entire emotional state with a disapproving look or a withheld text message, you are not powerful. You are controlled. And Machiavelli's entire philosophy begins with one non-negotiable principle. A ruler who needs the love of the crowd is a ruler the crowd owns. They will try to accuse you of being a narcissist. They will say you have changed. They will say you are cold, selfish, disconnected. Here is the one thought that neutralizes that attack instantly. Anyone who punishes you for having boundaries is confessing that they benefited from you having none. Read that again in your mind. Let it become the foundational law of your new psychology. Their anger at your self-prioritization is not evidence that you are wrong. It is evidence that your compliance was their resource. And the moment you cut off that resource, they experience withdrawal. Their accusation of selfishness is the tantrum of an addict losing their supply. And the supply was you. The death of validation is ego death in its purest, most liberated form. It is the moment you stop performing for an audience that never paid for the show. It is the moment your internal compass stabilizes because it is no longer being yanked in every direction by the magnetic pull of other people's expectations. It is the moment your self-worth becomes self-generated, self-sustained, and self-protected. And from that moment forward, you carry yourself differently, you speak differently, you decide differently. Because for the first time in your life, the only opinion in the room that matters to you is the one inside your own skull. This is the death that precedes invincibility, and once you survive it, once you stand on the other side of it with your sense of self fully intact and fully independent, you are ready for the next phase, the construction of what I call the closed circuit. Watch how people's behavior shifts violently when you deploy this. Because the closed circuit is not just a boundary. It is a psychological force field that makes manipulation physically impossible. The fourth stage of self-addiction is the construction of your closed circuit. This is where your weaponized detachment transforms from a mindset into a tangible, operational system. This is where you stop being a theory and start being a fortress. A closed circuit, in dark psychology terms, is a psychological architecture in which your emotional energy, your attention, your validation, and your care flow in one direction only, inward. It is a system in which nothing leaves your perimeter without your conscious strategic authorization. No emotional reaction leaves. No attention is given freely. No energy is donated without a calculated return. You become a self-contained power grid that generates its own fuel, distributes its own resources, and answers to no external demand. Machiavelli knew that the man who needs nothing from the crowd is the only man the crowd respects, and the closed circuit is the engineering blueprint for needing nothing. Here is how you build it. First, you audit every relationship in your life using one ruthless metric: net energy, not sentiment, not history, not obligation, net energy. Does this person leave you with more energy than you had before the interaction, or less? If the answer is less, if they consistently drain you, if every encounter leaves you emptier than you started, then that relationship is a leak in your circuit. And every leak must be sealed, not with confrontation, not with dramatic exits, with quiet, systematic, Machiavellian withdrawal. You do not announce your departure. You simply reduce your availability. You slow your response times. You shorten your conversations. You make yourself scarce, and you let the natural physics of human attachment do the rest. The parasites leave when the blood stops flowing. You do not need to push them out. You simply need to stop feeding them. If they call you arrogant, smile. It means the boundary is working. Second, you redirect every unit of recovered energy into a single obsessive focus. Your own development, your physical condition, your financial strategy, your intellectual sharpening, your creative output. Self-mastery in its most aggressive, most uncompromising form. You wake up, and the first thought in your mind is not who needs me today. It is what am I building today? You go to sleep and the last thought is not, did I make everyone happy? It is, did I advance my position? Every calorie of emotional energy that used to leak out through people-pleasing, through unnecessary social performance, through guilt-driven obligation, now cycles back into your own infrastructure. You become the project. You become the obsession. You become the addiction. Third, you install a protocol of strategic silence. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your choices. You stop narrating your progress to people who are not building anything. Your silence becomes your most powerful communication. Because when you stop broadcasting your intentions, the people around you lose the ability to predict, to manipulate, to preemptively undermine your moves. You become opaque. You become unreadable. You become, in the truest Machiavellian sense, dangerous, not because you are hostile, but because you are invisible, and invisible forces are the ones that reshape the world. Stop for a moment and calculate the energy you waste every week explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds about you. Calculate the hours spent defending your choices to people who have never made a courageous choice in their lives. Calculate the emotional bandwidth consumed by performing normalcy for an audience of people who would forget your name if you stopped entertaining them. Now imagine reclaiming all of it, every watt, every second, every drop of attention funneled back into you. That is the closed circuit. That is the architecture of becoming untouchable. That is Sigma male psychology translated into daily operational strategy. We are about to enter the final stage, the untouchable reality. This is where your life changes forever. This is where theory becomes flesh, where the person you were dies completely, and the person you are becoming steps into a reality so different, so elevated, so unreachable by anyone who once controlled you, that they will spend the rest of their lives wondering what happened to the obedient, convenient person they used to know. The answer is simple. You killed him, and you built something infinitely more powerful in his place. The fifth and final stage of self-addiction is the arrival of what I call the untouchable reality. This is not a concept. This is not a phase. This is the permanent state of psychological existence you enter when the closed circuit has been running long enough that your brain has physically, neurologically, irreversibly rewired itself around your own progress as the primary source of meaning, satisfaction, and power. You will know you have arrived here because the world will feel different. Not because the world changed, because you did. You will walk into rooms and feel no compulsion to perform. You will sit in silence and feel no anxiety to fill it. You will watch people compete for attention, for validation, for status, and you will feel the same detached curiosity a scientist feels watching organisms under a microscope. Not contempt, not superiority, simply distance. The distance of someone whose internal world is so rich, so demanding, so consuming, that the external theater of human social games has become irrelevant. This is what emotional detachment looks like when it is not a wound, but a weapon. This is what stop caring actually means. Not apathy born of defeat, but sovereignty born of design. You did not arrive here because you gave up. You arrived here because you redirected every ounce of the energy you used to waste on unworthy investments into the most worthy investment in existence: yourself. Machiavelli described the ideal prince not as the man who commanded the most soldiers, but as the man who commanded himself with such discipline that external forces became irrelevant to his trajectory. That is you now. Your discipline is your army. Your focus is your fortress. Your refusal to leak energy into the world's demands is your moat. And the empire you are building is the only one that cannot be seized, because it exists entirely within the architecture of your own mind. The dark psychology of the untouchable reality is this: when you stop needing anything from the external world begins to chase you. This is the paradox that destroys everything you were taught about relationships, success, and social dynamics. The needier you were, the more you were ignored. The more available you were, the more you were taken for granted. The harder you tried to earn love and respect, the faster they evaporated. But the moment you became a closed circuit, the moment you became genuinely, authentically unavailable because your own life consumed every available unit of your attention, something shifted. People who never noticed you began to orbit. Opportunities that never appeared began to materialize. Respect that was never offered began to arrive unsolicited. This is not magic. This is physics. Human beings are hardwired to value scarcity. They are neurologically compelled to pursue what withdraws from them and dismiss what is freely available. When you were pouring yourself out, you were abundant, free, unlimited, and so you were treated like any unlimited resource, taken, wasted, ignored. Now that you have become scarce, now that your time, your energy, your attention, your emotional availability are rare, expensive, and guarded, you have become the most valuable commodity in every room you enter, not because you performed, because you withdrew. Your self-addiction made you scarce, and your scarcity made you magnetic. At the end of this video, I'm giving you the precise mental anchor that ensures you never pour from an empty cup again. But first, let this final truth settle into the deepest layer of your consciousness. The untouchable reality is not a destination you visit. It is an identity you become. It is the permanent reorganization of your nervous system, your priorities, your relationships, and your self-concept around one unshakable axis. You are the center. You are the priority. You are the project, the mission, the obsession, and the reward. Everything and everyone else is optional. That is self-addiction in its final, perfected Machiavellian form. And once it takes hold, it does not let go. Because why would you ever go back to pouring your life into other people's cups when you have finally tasted what it feels like to overflow into your own? You began this video as someone who had been conditioned to bleed for a world that never bled for you. You understood, perhaps for the first time, the mechanics of energy harvesting, how they identified you, trained you, and drained you of everything you had, while giving you nothing but guilt-wrapped obligations in return. You discovered the addiction transfer, the neurological pivot from pouring into their emergencies to investing in your own empire. You survived the death of validation, the most terrifying and most liberating moment in any human life, the moment you killed the part of you that needed permission from others to exist. You built the closed circuit, the operational architecture of a self-sustaining, self-rewarding, self-protecting psychological fortress, and you stepped into the untouchable reality, the permanent state of sovereign existence where your own progress is your drug, your silence is your strategy, and your unavailability is your ultimate power. You walk through every stage, and you are not the same person who pressed play. Here is your final challenge, and I am going to deliver it with the same ruthlessness that you now carry inside you. Stop apologizing for your transformation. Stop softening your edges to make the people who exploited you comfortable. Stop diluting your self-obsession because someone who never built anything tells you it is wrong. You have spent a lifetime being selfless, and that selflessness made you empty, exhausted, and invisible. It is your turn now, not in moderation, not in balance, in totality, radically, violently, unapologetically prioritize your own existence. Become so addicted to your own growth, your own power, your own silent ascension, that there is nothing left over for the parasites, the energy vampires, and the guilt merchants who built their lives on your sacrifice. You owe them nothing. You owe yourself everything, and the debt is long overdue. If this video reached into the part of you that has been silently screaming for permission to put yourself first, I want you to do one thing right now. Go to the comments and type 3 words. Type, "Obsess over you," not because it is a comment, because it is a covenant. It is the moment you formally, publicly, irreversibly declare that the era of pouring into everyone else is over, and the era of self-addiction has begun. Type it, let it burn into your psychology, and carry it with you into every decision you make from this moment forward. Now hear me clearly. If this is the first time you have encountered this space, understand exactly what you have found. This is not motivation. This is not feel-good philosophy. This is the only place on this platform that teaches the dark psychology of self-mastery with the surgical precision and Machiavellian depth that your mind requires. Every video here is a weapon forged for one purpose: to take the most intelligent, most exploited, most quietly furious minds on this planet and arm them with the strategic psychology to become untouchable. If that is who you are, and you would not still be here if it were not, then subscribe. Not because I asked, but because you understand that the alliance you are joining is the rarest thing the algorithm has ever offered you. A community of silent strategists who are done being used and are building empires in the shadows. Subscribe and step into the circle, and whatever you do, do not stop here. The video on your screen right now is not a suggestion. It is the next layer of the architecture we just built together. It contains a strategy so precisely designed for the person you are becoming at this exact moment that ignoring it would be like laying the foundation of a fortress and then walking away before the walls go up. Click it. Watch it. Let it complete the transformation we started here today. I will see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.